Hello, everybody. It's Houston Mallette. Welcome back to Hangin with Huey. Once again, thank you to StudioPlace for making this all possible. This is a great opportunity, and I think this is going to be a really great episode. I have my role model, one of my best friends on the podcast today, and somebody who's really taught me everything I know about life, pretty much. He's made everything possible in my life, and I'm incredibly grateful to have him. I think this would be an awesome kind of, series to start with, like the person who made it all possible. So today we have Wesley Mallette, my father, here today on the pod. So I'll kind of let him do a lot of the talking today because when growing up, I mean, he used to give me so many valuable lessons on life and just like all the things I've learned. So I just want you to kind of introduce yourself, Dad, and kind of say how you grew up, where you come from, and like kind of up to when I was born, and we'll take it from there.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. Well, first, this is a great day. I mean, I'm like sitting here on my son's podcast, and what could be better? I mean, obviously having your little sisters here would be awesome too. But I'm proud of you, dude. I'm really proud of you. So just for your viewers and your listeners, I will probably refer to you as Buddy a lot. And just so you guys know, Buddy's Houston's family nickname, only the family, Buddy's his family nickname. So it's interchangeable. No, but it's awesome being here today. I'm really proud of you, man. I love you. I'm really proud of you.
Thank you, Dad. I love you.
So, all right. So long and short, my story. So, I was raised by your grandmother, by Grammy, in North Jersey with my brothers and sisters. Went to James Madison undergrad. Maryland grad school. Then career-wise, I worked at BET, then MTV, or Victoria's Secret, then MTV. Ad agency for a bit, ran my own thing for a little while. And then, Cal, a number of years there in Berkeley, in athletics. Then over to the Pac-12, and now as the athletic director at UC Riverside. And I'll tell you, I feel like professionally, I feel like I'm doing exactly what God put me on this earth to do. Being your parent, Sully's dad, the two of you, is my son and my daughter, makes me a better professional every day because it allows me to make sure when I'm talking with the student athletes and when I'm talking with their parents that, I let them know I'm going to treat your son or daughter as if they were my own because I would not want anybody treating you and Sully any type of way. So I'm going to make sure that the student athletes that I'm responsible for and the coaches that manage them and build them, guide them, and develop them every day, treat them the way they're supposed to be treated. One of my mantras is be a good human, start there. If you're a good human, everything else falls into place. And then, as a dad, being your dad has been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of work because obviously it was me and you for a very, very long time. But I don't regret any of it. And it's been an awesome journey. And to see you where you are today as a dad is, it's awesome. It's because it's like I get to be your dad. That's the best job in the world. Be your dad and Sully's dad. There's nothing better than that.
Yeah. Awesome.
So
appreciate that. What was athletics like for you growing up? Like what sports did you play? I know, like obviously you're my dad, so I played baseball, basketball, and football up until high school for the most part, and then also ran track a little bit in high school. But I know you played a ton of sports growing up. How pivotal was athletics in your life?
It was everything. I'm a competitor by nature, and I compete against myself more than anybody else. Growing up, started off playing soccer, baseball, basketball when I was little. Because your Grammy, my mom would not let your Uncle Chris and I play football for a long time. When she did, it was football, baseball, track and field. Then the latter part of high school, just track and field and football. We had an unbelievable track team in my high school, and I was proud to be, part of that team at Hanover Park. One of the top teams in the state of New Jersey. Football was always great.
What events did you go in track?
Hurdles, long jump, and the relays.
Did you 100-meter hurdles?
Yep, 110 hurdles, long jump, and in the 4x1 to 4x4. Hated the 4x4. That was painful.
Why?
Anything over 200 meters, it's not for me. I'm just like, I'm short distance and that's it. Yeah. But But I loved it. And the thing about it was is what I realized was the coaches that I had, there were key coaches that I had along the way that really made a difference because those individuals were inspiring. They led me in ways that other people couldn't. And they allowed me to really understand and realize what my passion was, which was sports, music, and art. And, making the decision about what I wanted to do in life really centered around those three things because those were my three passions. And the thing that I learned through sports was you're going to have the highest of highs and the lowest of lows and everything in between. But everything that you experience through sport, everything you're going to experience in life, you're going to learn through sport how to deal with it.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I use that phrase all the time. Like, even at kind of Alabama, we're reading this book called Pound the Stone by Joshua Metcalf. Also, interesting enough, like we read Chop Wood, Carry Water.
that's right. That's one of my favorite sayings. Just keep chopping.
Yeah.
That's what life's about.
Exactly.
You got to just keep chopping.
And in that, like I always say, like sport is a microcosm of life. I remember talking to Coach Pannone, and like obviously I've been injured and I haven't been able to play as much as I want to right now. But we were just talking about basically how like life is, like this is all a teacher of it. Like basketball is important, but you're putting a round ball in a hoop. And I know I'm just like you. I get very obsessed. I have a very obsessive personality, and kind of like it takes up a lot of my mind. But he's spot on. You're spot on. Like basketball is going to end for all of us. Like I plan to play until I can't walk anymore, like at the YMCA or whatever. But like that's not who we are as people.
Right.
The game's not who we are as people. But I think like that's a great point. So kind of before we get into like kind of our story, like what made you want to leave the corporate world and get back into athletics?
That's a great question. Honestly, I reached a point where I felt like I couldn't be who I was. I felt like I was like putting on a mask every day and I was suppressing my passion. I wouldn't say it was a vacuous existence, but it definitely felt like I wasn't able to really be and be my true authentic self. And one thing I've learned through coaching, through being an AD, when you build people and you invest in them and you allow them to be their true authentic self and work and operate in a level where they're, like we say in sports, they're playing to win versus playing not to lose because they're playing with a reckless abandon and no fear because they can just be themselves. And that confidence level continues to grow. I didn't feel that in the corporate world. I felt like I was doing the job and, playing the part and playing the role. It was a good life. It was a great life, but it wasn't for me. I realized that athletics was my true calling. Once I got back into athletics, my career just started to skyrocket because I was able to be me and lead in the way that's truly authentic to me. I believe leadership is something that a lot of people take for granted. And just because you're in a position of leadership doesn't mean you know how to lead, right? In order to lead, people have to follow. So what does it take for people to follow? You want to inspire them. How do you inspire them? Like I always talk about, you have to build a great culture. And as a leader, your culture is really defined by you every day, right? To me, we built a culture of listening, caring. It's a culture that's inclusive, cares about people, and it meets people where they are to help them get to where they want to go. So as a leader, you have to invest in and you have to pour into your people. But if you're not meeting them where they are, you're forcing them to be in a place where they're trying to get to where you want them to be before they're ready. So pouring into your people, leading them, investing in them, finding ways to inspire them means you have to know them.
Yeah.
And the only way you get to know them is you have to spend time with them. And in the corporate side, it's hard to do that, right? On the athletic side, we're together every day, sometimes 10, 12, 14, 16 hours.
Absolutely.
Extended periods of time. And so you learn everything you're going to learn about that person. So when they're not at their best, how do you get them there? So it's the same thing with coaches. Coaches have to know when my student athletes or my players at the pro level aren't at their best, what do I need to do to get them there? So that's like with leadership. To me, the true test of a great culture is really simple. Are your people smiling? When you walk through your building, when you walk through the locker room, when you walk through the arena, when you walk through campus, whatever your venue is, are your people smiling? Are they happy? Yeah. Are you building an environment where they can flourish because they're happy? And that starts with the leader. They go as you go.
Yeah, awesome. So now I kind of want to pivot into kind of our life together. And so just to give like a little preface, like, so my dad and my mom I was born in Santa Monica, so literally right up the street
Right.
from here.
Yeah, right down the street.
Right down the street. So
St. John's Hospital.
yeah, they gotten a divorce. So then we moved to the Bay Area first, correct? And then they ended up getting divorced while I was about a year old. And so the divorce was finalized during, I would say, like when the economy crashed, right? Around like when I was 4 or 5 years old. So how difficult was like parenting me, like being a single dad in the Bay Area, which is an incredibly expensive market? Like how difficult was that? Like stress financially, trying to take care of a kid, work a job, take me to practice, and kind of, you know.
Well,
take
it
care
was
of me.
it was hard. You know, it wasn't easy. The way I looked at it is obviously before your little sister was born, Soli was born. Those years together, you know, what I realized was, you know, my mom raised 5 of us by herself. So I was like, I used to say to Grammy, Ma, you raised 5, I can do 1. I can figure it out. And she was always encouraging, but I always knew, like, I set my goals and I knew what was most important. And the most important thing to me is you and your sister, right? There's nothing more important in my world than you and Soli. So there's nothing I won't do to make sure you guys are in a good place. So again, all those lessons you learn in life through sport, all of a sudden they came full circle. And Uncle Chris told me, you know, when I became a single parent and I was raising you, you know, he's like, hey man, you prepared every year, you know, to win a championship, whether it's state championship, national championship, whatever, with your teammates. This is the biggest championship you ever had because you only got 1 shot to raise your son. You got your whole life to get your career back. So, you know, I left the corporate world at that point so I could raise you. So I want to make sure I was there every day to get you to daycare, then get you to preschool, to get you to kindergarten, get you to middle school, pick you up, make sure you had everything you needed, because there was nothing more important to make sure you were set in a good place. We built a really strong community, you know, in the Bay where we lived for a long time. And every day I got up, it's like I always say, it's not what keeps me up at night, it's what wakes me up in the morning. And what wakes me up in the morning is making sure you're in a good spot. So it was hard. You know, it was a lot of pain, a lot of stress, but I knew that's when the whole thing came to me about, you just got to chop wood, just carry water. It's the process. You can't be married to the outcome. You got to be committed to the process.
Yeah.
So every single day, it was just get 1 day further, 1 day ahead. Then every night I'd say, how can I be better tomorrow than I was today? And so I'd evaluate my own performance as a dad, you know, as a professional, and whatever it took to make it work. And yeah, the economy bottomed out. During that time period. It was hard for a lot of people. It was exceptionally hard being in the Bay as a single dad, you know, with 1 income household trying to make it work. But we did it, you know, and that was all there is to it. There's never a doubt. Yeah. You know, it was one of my I had two unbelievable athletic directors at Cal, Mike Williams and Sandy Barber. And Sandy used to say to us, failure is not an option, right?
Yeah.
And I've taken that with me my whole life. And Mike used to always say, big people have to do big things for little people to make sure they're in a good spot, right? So those 2 things I've always taken with me, and that carried over into raising you and all those fun days that we had, you know, as you hit middle school and, you know, at Cal when we were there.
Awesome. Yeah. I just want to, you know, thank you for that. Obviously you sacrificed a lot. When you're younger, you don't really now that I'm older, and like now that
You're really old now, huh?
Well, now that I am older,
You're a grown ass man now. That's right. You got the bass in your voice and everything.
Exactly. But now that I'm older,
proud of you, dude. I'm really proud of you. Sorry, buddy. Go ahead.
I don't understand it because I don't have children, but I see like that's not an easy thing to do. It's hard for me to pick other things over playing basketball. Like, and I personally don't know if I could do the same, especially like, I think a big thing for you is like, people always ask me all the time, like, do I ever get mad? Like how loud you are at my games or whatever the case may be. For one, like people should be loud at a basketball game.
First of all, the only reason it sounds so loud is because there's nobody in the building.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like the thing in Tuscaloosa, you're going to find there's going to be 15,000 other people in the building.
Yeah.
So I tell people all the time, like, it's a game, not a library. You're there to cheer. You're there to inspire people, get the kids going.
Yeah, no,
and
exactly.
there's a reason why it's hard to play in certain stadiums and certain arenas because the fans are so loud.
Yeah.
Like, what do you like? Watching people at some games when they're on their phones and they're thinking about other stuff. I'm like, support the kids, man. get in and get behind them.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but go ahead.
But yeah, I was just gonna say, like, obviously you didn't have your father there in your life, so I think part of you wanted to be a dad you never really had, I guess you could say. So, I mean, obviously, like, I've been in Division I athletics now for 4 years, like being a college basketball player. What does it take to have your kid become a collegiate basketball player? What is that formula for parents out there? Obviously, it's different for every kid, but like how, like a lot of parents now, they try and like handicap their kids by giving them like pretty much everything they could possibly ask for. Like if they're playing AAU, I'm talking about more so this, like they're playing AAU, like they bounce team to team to team to team because they don't like the situation. Like how important is it to have your kid go through some sort of adversity to be able to be a college athlete? So, and what did those days look like? Like, especially when I was younger, like playing AAU and obviously moving out of Alameda when I was in 6th grade, going to like San Ramon and then Oakland, Richmond, all those different types of places.
So it's a great question. So for starters, and I tell parents this a lot because I get a lot of calls from parents about what does it take. One, you have to have a real understanding of how good is your kid and what's your kid's ceiling, right? Not every kid's a D1 kid, right? And not every kid's there's a lot of parents who live vicariously through their children, which is a terrible thing to do. There's a lot of parents and a lot of kids who have an overinflated sense of self, right? To me, the formula is, one, your child has to have the talent and the ability, right? Two, you have to invest in them, right? And the way I look at it is with you and Soli, I let you guys find what you loved. And once you identify what it is you loved, then we went all in on it. And we poured everything we had into it to put you in a position where you had an opportunity and you then have a chance, right? Because without an opportunity, you don't have a chance, right? So when I realized when you were 9 years old, we had come back from football practice, some Wolverines practice, right? And I was in the back with a couple of the other coaches, Ron Robertson, LaRon, the guys, Junior, Tautasi, Anthony, all the coaches. And we were in the back and you were at tryouts for basketball that day. And one of the coaches came running into the room. It's like, you need to come out here right now. You need to come out here right now. I was like, what happened? And I ran into the gym and they had all the kids out there and they were like, watch. And you were 9 years old and you were literally destroying every single kid out there effortlessly. And that's the moment when I knew this kid's got what it takes. Because when you've done it and you work in it, you can see it. So I knew at that point, if Houston decides to pursue basketball, he's going to be in a great, great position. And I watched that at 9 years old, I knew, okay, this is where you're going. You still play baseball, play football for another year or two. But then once I realized basketball, when you said, Dad, basketball is what I want to do, we went all in. And that's when I realized at a certain point, by the time you hit 6th grade, you were tall at that point, but there's coaches and people who are like, we're going to play him at the 4 or 5. I'm like, he's not going to be a 4 or 5 as he gets older. He needs to learn how to be the 1 or the 2 or both. So got you from there to, over to Oakland, where you play with Keena, and Keena Payton and his team. And Keena developed you into a point guard / combo guard, and I always say, like, you had a lot of great coaches, but Keena taught you how to be an Oakland point guard, right? Which developed your moxie and your spirit and everything that goes along with it. And then other coaches developed your shooting, like Coach Marcus and everyone else, right? And so on and so on. Anyway, long story short, as a parent, you have to realize how good is your kid, what's your kid's dream. Then you have to put your kid in a position where they're with coaches, right? There's 2 types of high school coaches, in my opinion, right? There's a coach who can get your kid recruited because they're connected and they're focused on the bigger picture. Then there's the coach who wants to be the big person at the bar on the weekends and brag about their team and a state championship that they're going after, right? So, and then finally with that, buddy, from a parental standpoint, people have to realize also, it's like, look, once you put your kid in that position and they're on their way, you got to get out of the way. You're not, like, you don't coach them. Like, the one thing I've never done, I tell all coaches, I will never call a coach about your playing time. I will never call a coach about how you're doing. I will always make sure coaches know how you and your sister Soli are doing with your mental health, with what's going on in your world, how you're doing in school, other things that are impacting you, because it allows that coach to coach you better. The coach's job is to coach. The parent's job is to be the parent.
Yeah.
And all the parents who get in the way, and of their kids are damaging their kids' ability and opportunity to really excel, because coaches and administrators get to a point where you're like, you want to deal with that.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, definitely. I would say like from an early age, like I remember like I would come home after school or whatever. And mind you, I didn't have social media until I think I was in 8th grade.
Right.
You didn't let me get social media until 8th grade. So I was never on my phone like at all. So like what me and my friends would do after school, because he would work late, we'd go to the park and we'd just play like baseball, we'd play basketball, we'd just play football like all day long. Like there's ice plant. I don't know if you guys know what ice plant is, but we'd play
it's
like
a real California thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ice plant's a real California thing. It's like kind of like this sharp, it's like near, if you are by a coast, you'll see it or look it up. But we used to play, I'm not going to use the phrase, but you throw the ball in the air and you go and like you try and tackle each other. And we used to play that like all the time growing up. And then we used to just go to the park, and like I would always go to the park. Like, I remember going to the park with like Zach especially. And like I would always look up videos on like my dad's old laptop at the house of just like shooting and how to shoot. And like I didn't really realize it, but like I mean I love basketball, and like if like you'll see it, you can see in somebody when they love it or not. So kind of like last thing, like what are some of your most memorable experiences like with us together? Just get some insight into the story.
There's so many. I think one of them that I love the most is just driving in the car with you and Sully. Just taking drives, and wherever we're going, whether we're always driving long distances, right? Yeah. Whether it's to practice or a game or taking a trip, for whatever it may be for you or for her. Dinners, we used to make dinner and just, have that time where they were grilling out in the back or whatever. Watching you guys laugh, is probably the best part of life. Knowing your kids, as a parent, knowing your kids are happy is like the best thing ever. Yeah. Grandma used to always say, parenting is the toughest job you'll ever love. And to me, there's no truer statement. But I'd say probably we have so many memories around basketball and around sports because it's just a lifestyle for our family. But to me, it's not so much the sport aspect of it, but everything around it. Like when we fly places, drive places, go places, you see the world through sport. Yeah. And being able to have those experiences with you and with Soli, especially when she was little, just a little pup, following around and tagging along, and now she's doing it at the high school level. But just be able to be a part of that, and then to be part of the journey, right? To guide the journey, and then hand you off to, first Coach Romar, Coach Oates, Coach Murphy and the crew down in Tuscaloosa. Yeah. Just being part of that journey and watching you grow has been the best part. Like I tell people, it's a lot of fun being your dad, because you're a good kid and you become a good adult. You're becoming a really good adult and a really good young man because your value system's right. Your head's on straight. You're a good human. You care about people. You do some funny stuff. You're quick to you love, starting arguments, not arguments, but like the back and forth about who's the greatest ever and all those things, which I find comical and amusing. But it's just a lot of fun being your dad, man.
Appreciate it. And then kind of like last question, this will go back, but I think it's an interesting opportunity. Obviously, like this podcast, like being able to
this is a great podcast. I love the name too, man.
Being able to do this as a collegiate athlete in like the NIL space. Like, I mean, StudioPlace has been a great like NIL opportunity. It's been my favorite. It's been like the best kind of thing because I love being able to talk and like sit down with people and, kind of speak their mind. I love reading. I'm a big reader. I used to hate reading in high school, but like I do really appreciate it now. And so like kind of reading and getting a feel off people and like seeing different perspectives, I think is really interesting. But that kind of wants to signal my way. Like obviously college athletics is much different now as when you were in it. So what was it like at James Madison, like in terms of did guys get paid? Like, what was that like? Like, there wasn't even, you guys didn't even have cost of attendance back then. So
No.
what was that like?
I'll say this. 30 years from now.
Yeah, and the social media. Like, you tell me, talk about social media as well. So
30 years from now, remember that question when you're talking to your son or your daughter and you're asking them what it's like. Because 30 years ago, obviously it was a lot different.
Yeah.
We didn't have social media, so you didn't have to worry about the scroll, right? I mean, today you see people like their heads at a certain angle and they're scrolling. You had to earn it.
Yeah.
Everything you did, you had to earn. I had great teammates, great classmates. I love JMU, man. JMU was, to me, I modeled my program at UC Riverside based on the experience I had as a student and a student athlete at James Madison, because they did it right. They cared about the student athletes. They cared about the students. Everybody was together on the campus. It was a real pivotal time in society as well. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of things going on back then. Like the 3 days before graduation was the Rodney King beating, right? So this is 92.
Yeah.
But the way our community came together was everything. We didn't need social media for that. Mm-hmm. We had each other, right? You actually had real conversations with people. Now, when we connect, like there's several
it's crazy.
text
People
chains.
can't talk really without.
Yeah, it's like I always tell people all the time, like
really
if you have 30,000 followers on your Instagram, right? If you walked into a mall or you walked into a building or you walked into a stadium and you saw 30,000, how many of those people would you know? How many of those people could you call by name, sit down, have a conversation with, and know what's going on in your life and their life outside of what you may have seen that they posted, right? It's the depth that we had. It's the substance that we had. We have real friendships, real relationships with people. Those dudes are my brothers for life, man.
Yeah.
And always will be. Like all of our kids now are doing what you're doing, or they're pursuing their dreams in whatever area it is.
Yeah. Do you wish you had NIL back then? I mean, it would have been nice.
I'm sure all of us do.
Yeah.
Right. But for the record, like as an AD, I have no issues with NIL.
Yeah.
None. I firmly believe that if we can pay coaches and ADs and administrators at the higher levels, right? It's not really at the mid-major level. It's not that much of a deal the way it is at the high major level. But if folks can make the salaries they are, you take away the kids, the student athletes, especially in men's basketball and football primarily, but also in every other sport, you're not making that money.
Yeah.
The student athletes are the ones doing the work.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm fully in favor of what's happening right now. Now, I do believe there should be guardrails, and we don't know how this thing is going to play out ultimately. And for all of us, it needs to be reined in to a degree with some parameters and guardrails, so we know how to operate.
It will. Like out just being at this like.
The SEC leadership thing.
Leadership.
I'm really proud of you for that, by the way. I'm really proud of you. Wait, hold on. So that's really big, man. Because again, this is not just about being a student athlete, right? You're more than a basketball player.
Yeah, no,
and
exactly.
being part of that crew, like that was one of the proudest days I've had when you sent me the post of you and your other classmates at Alabama participating.
No, it was awesome. Like especially being like a transfer student, like being able to go there. It's the first time they had it in Dallas, and like the SEC is the only conference that meets in a location with their athletes. It's been in Birmingham for years. I'm happy it went to Dallas, so because you kind of get away and like everybody's there.
Right.
But when we were there, like Greg Sankey came to talk to us, and we had his name was Matt. Can't remember his last name, but he was like the lawyer, basically that kind of goes through everything. And college athletics might look a whole lot different.
Oh, it's going to
next
look very
year.
different.
Like,
yes.
Especially with the Power Four conferences now, they're in a debt of like between I think like $22 to like $28 million for former student athletes who did not receive NIL. And like honestly, and so going forward, there's going to be a 22% rev share of the revenue that comes in, I believe.
More or less.
Yeah. I don't know the
it's
exact
very
details.
Confusing. It's still being figured out, but yes.
The NCAA, when they allowed NIL, I think it's great, but they set no parameters on it, and it's kind of biting them back in the ass a little bit, like with all these lawsuits. But I think the rev share will be far interesting, like because now, like how does Title IX come into play? How does sports that don't revenue generating sports, how do they, kind of come into play? But I think it'll be a lot interesting. I think the cool piece is, NIL will still be intact. So opportunities outside of the university. And it also kind of levels the playing field a little bit in terms of like these massive collectives, like paying people like insane amounts of money, which kind of like, especially you see it from a facility standpoint, like obviously being at Alabama versus being at Pepperdine facilities, it's not competitive at all.
No, it's
and like
day.
The people at Pepperdine were great. We had great staff. Coach Young was amazing, but like they don't have all the same opportunity that is at, kind of a Power 4 school.
Right.
So I think it'll be interesting. Like I'm curious to see where college athletics goes, and you're right about seeing where my kids in the next 30
years from now. Well,
yeah, I wonder how it's going to work then. Because like now, like the big issue I remember, because I was on the student athlete leadership council, like NCAA, and like we'd have meetings on Zoom about how our student athletes employees. So
there's a lot there.
Yeah,
there's a lot to figure out. And there's certain protections that student athletes are going to want to, keep and have in place.
Definitely.
There's certain protections they're going to have in place, and becoming an employee kind of takes some of those away. But
being a student athlete is a job.
It's a job
because like school is one thing, especially Pepperdine, incredibly academically rigorous. Alabama is also a pretty good school. Like you have to do classwork at the same time you're spending. I spend probably like 60 hours a week basketball. Like you have practice, you have workouts, lift, film, meetings, treatment, travel, nutrition, all these different things that go into being an athlete. So you have all that on top of when you go home. Like you're also going to watch film when you go home.
Right.
So
and you're investing in it, and that's the thing. Like the one thing that, Greg Byrne has done at Alabama, which I admire, is he's doing it the right way there. It's a Power 4 program, and the way everything has been structured.
Tradition, and everybody supports everybody. Like it is a winning culture.
It is an absolute winning culture.
We call it T-Town, Title Town.
Right.
Really,
and legends are made there, right? And he does it the right way. Greg was at Arizona when I was at Cal. He was the AD there when I was working under Sandy and then Mike. And we watched what he was doing there. Yeah. And so what he's been able to do in the model that he's set, and the model that, quite frankly, with Yale, Alabama, from a collective standpoint, I don't think there's a better one in the country in terms of how they've got it structured, how it runs, and the way that it operates, because it's doing it the way it's supposed to be done, right?
Most definitely.
So you scale it down, at the mid-major level for places like mine at UCR, it's how do we remain competitive in that space and still continue forward where we can be. So like you think about, like, for example, our men's basketball program, when I took over 4 years ago and hired Mike as our coach, Mike Pio, we were at the bottom of the league. Yeah. And in the last 4 years, you take the last 4 year aggregate, that aggregate, we're the third best team record-wise in that conference.
That's awesome.
Now, that's not because of NIL. That's because of culture, coaching, and development, and just buy into what we're doing. Now we're adding in the NIL piece. That only adds to it. So you want to remain competitive. You may not win the NIL space, but NIL, you're not going to buy a championship.
No, it's hard to do. Miami tried to do it.
Miami tried to do it. At the pro level, the Cowboys have tried to do it for years. Yeah. Right? How's that work out for them? Yeah. No offense to Cowboy fans, but at the same time, it's like you can't buy wins. You still have to coach. You still have to develop. The players still have to play. They got to come together, and you can have all the great names in the world. But one of the other things we talked about when you were going on all your visits, when you hit the portal, was what coach or what coaching staff, what administration on a campus are doing it the right way, where they're truly bringing everybody together, where it's done the right way.
Yeah, like Nate Oates, Coach Preston, like all these guys come from mid-major programs.
Right.
Like if you look at our team, half the team like comes from mid-major like they know what it's like to not have resources to grind, and like they are grinders. They want to win. And like the one thing I can appreciate, they're not like a lot of teams now are like they're not buying anybody, but like they're recruiting people that fit what they do.
Right.
And it's not about the money. We want to win. We want to get 4 championships, the one in Vegas, the 2 SECs and the championship.
And
so,
Natty,
yeah.
yep.
I mean, I'm excited, but yeah, I think NIL's headed in a very interesting direction. Still
Well,
really up in the air.
Yeah, and it's like one of the things I always say, you got to find a way, right? Like
Absolutely.
when I listen to coaches and administrators complain about it, I'm just like, shut up, stop complaining, because the bottom line is, it's here. It's like anything else, figure it out, or it'll figure itself out for you, right?
Yeah,
so you
always
just got to
told
figure
me,
it out.
You've always
Find a
told
way.
me, like, do what you love and the money will come.
That's right.
Like, but you got to do what you love first, man. Like,
You do.
I don't play basketball for money. Like, I play it because I love playing basketball.
Right.
Like,
And basketball opens doors.
Yeah.
You see the world.
Exactly. The
You get
relationships you
unbelievable
build.
relationships.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, that's the beauty of sport. Like, if you think about, like, right now, the whole world, well, a lot of the world's watching the Olympics, right?
Yeah.
The whole world's watching the World Cup, right? The Super Bowl is a different deal, right? But sport brings nations together.
No, exactly.
You know, it
Like
transcends.
that photo Greg Byrne has in his office. It's a photo. You could probably Google it. It's a football game. And it's like from 1900s or something. And it's black and white. And there's just like a crowd full of people watching the game and a building's burning on fire behind them. And they're focused on the game. So that's what
right.
sport can do.
I mean, because sport, like the one thing I love about sport, especially, you know, not to make it political, but you look at the political environment and the world that we live in. Just take America, for example, right? America can be divided on so many different things. Sport is the one thing that brings people together.
Yeah.
Right? Across racial lines, race, ethnicity, religion, gender, politics, social society, like class and society, whatever. It brings people together. So I take my job very seriously, because I know I'm in charge of 325 student athletes, 75 coaches and staff, 400 plus people every day, and their families. But when we go out, and no matter what's going on in the world, when we go out and compete, we're bringing a university and a community and a region together behind a common cause. You scale it up. Like, to me, I'm definitely going to the Euro Cup the next go round. Like, just watching all the nations come together and how much fun people are having just being around one another. You know, it's like you talk about, be a good human, start there. And you realize, like, that's what's most important in life. And if sport is the thing that can do that, you know, what could be better?
For sure.
You know, I mean, when you think about it, son, you're going to have an opportunity to do what you love and earn a living for a period of time in your life somewhere in the world. Yeah. Playing the game you love. For sure. And then you'll be able to go from there to coaching or being an administrator or doing whatever you want to do professionally. You know, you've been in one great school at Pepperdine. You're going to graduate from another great school at Alabama, and who knows what happens after that. Yeah. But you're already set up in great position for life, because you've learned all of these things so far. Exactly. You know, how you've been raised, what you've experienced as a kid, you know, where you are now, the coaches that have been around you, the people, your parents, your family. Man, it's just great. And it's like, you guys have, as a parent, you always want the next generation to be better, right? You always want your kids to do better than you did, right? So to me, I'm just like, watching where you are and then watching where Soli's going to be, like, this is the best thing in the world as a dad. You know, I'm really proud of you guys, man.
Thank you, Dad. Well, I appreciate you.
Man, I appreciate you too.
Podcast today, coming on Hangin with Huey. Thank you guys for listening. Once again, thank you to StudioPlace for, you know, giving us this opportunity to kind of tell our story. This is the most important story in my life. And I really love my father, and he has a lot of good nuggets. He impacts so many people in the world. I used to always get upset with him because it doesn't matter who you are, like whether you're on the street, whatever, you're like, he'll talk to you. He'll make time for you. He'll somehow find a way to connect. Dude is a legend at connecting. So I appreciate you coming on, Dad. So thank you.
Thank you for having me, son. This is a great day for me. Watching my boy do what he does and watching you become a man and just like hanging with Huey, all the things you're doing. I mean, what could be better? I'm proud of you, man. I love you.
Thank you, Dad. I love you.